I've just dragged this up from the bottom of the garden. It's quite a drag for a heavy machine. I've borrowed it from a mate. Thank you, Baz. I do appreciate you lending me stuff, but so often when you've got a friendly mate who lends his stuff to other people, it gets returned in a pretty bad state. And I started using it and immediately found it wasn't doing the job. So I've pulled it apart to check the knives. And these knives, you should be able to cut your finger on when you do that. And as my old dad used to say about knives that were blunt, you could write "Bear Ash to London" on that and not even leave a mark. Yeah, so I'm going to have to pull these knives out and give them a sharpen up before I can use it. So here we go again. It makes another tiny house and off-grid resources video come alive. So I'm going to go and get some tools and we're going to pull these knives out and give them a tickle up. I'm the kind of guy who puts together flat pack furniture without getting the instructions out. And I've never pulled one of these apart, but it's fairly self-evident, I think. You need to just remove a few components so that you can get down to the blades, and then with the appropriate tools, in my case a dentist's pick, a scriber, I'm using it to clean the residue out of the Allen headed cap screws so that I can get the Allen key in, and then I'll just select the right kind of spanner to fit in down the back. The ones that are close into the bearing housing need to be undone with a spanner, but the others can be got at with a socket set. So it doesn't take long to get these things out. But once they're out, you can see what you're faced with. Yeah, well, they're nasty, as you can see. There's going to be a lot of grinding needed to get those to clean up. I'm going to have to start by setting them up in the vise end on and attacking them fairly savagely with an angle grinder, because they need so much removed to get them down to a usable level again, past all these notches and nicks that have been taken out of them. I want to make sure that they're horizontal, so I've got a little 6-inch ruler here, and I'm just making sure that as I set them up in the vise, that the cutting angle is parallel with the top of the vise. That way it makes it a lot easier for me to keep the whole thing on the same cutting angle as it used to be. They're in an awful state, as you can see. They were hollow ground, and I'm going to try and replicate the hollow ground, because doing that means that the edge will last a little bit longer than flat ground. And you do that by raising the back of the angle grinder. As you can see, I'm grinding with the blade on quite a heavy angle. That will put the hollow ground into it. And now I've come around 90 degrees, just lightly. Coming at it from two directions gives you contrasting patterns, and you can see low spots and high spots much easier. I'm now at the stage where I'm ready to start smoothing it out, so into the belt sander with a brand new belt on it. Now, this doofery that I've got in the bag, that looks a little bit like a miniature sniper's rifle, isn't actually a miniature sniper's rifle. It's a high quality knife sharpening kit. What it does is it maintains the set angle of the blade. Instead of sharpening the blade and just holding it in your hands and trying to maintain the correct angle, this is a jig for sharpening. It comes with a selection of stones that go from about 150 right the way to 1500. So each of these stones is a different carborundum grade on it, and they get clamped into the wand, and the wand gets drawn back and forth in a rotary motion guided by this device, and it makes sure that your knife is sharpened on a constant even angle all the way along the blade. They make a huge difference. It's slow and time consuming, but if you want a good knife, this is how you do it. Up at the top of the screen you'll see a link coming up now that will show you a knife that I made from scratch from a Morris Minor car leaf spring a couple of weeks ago. Now, as you can imagine, you could while away half to 3/4 of an hour easily doing this if you were to start off with the 150 stone and then work down through the 150, the 400, the 800, the 1000, and finally the 1500. Because this isn't a chef's knife or a hunting knife where we're looking for filleting fish or anything like that, this is just for chopping up garden waste. I'm only going to use the 400, but it gives me a chance to put a nice even edge all the way along these knives so that the cutting edge will last a lot longer than if it was just ground. There's no point in me showing you the whole process, so we'll skip across now and we'll have a look at putting these things back into the machine. And here we go. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. There's still a couple of tiny little nicks. You've got to remember that you can't work on the nick to get it out. You've got to work on every other part of the blade apart from the nick to get it down to that depth. So I've had to remove a lot of material from these blades, and I don't want to be going too further, but they're an awful lot better than they were half an hour ago. So come on, let's go and stick them back in, and I'll get on with the job I should have been getting on with. So the first thing to do is to clean the little recess that they fit into to make sure that they're going to sit down, make sure that there are no lumps of wood or burrs on the metal or anything like that. Check the bolts to make sure that the bolts aren't damaged before you put them back in. And whenever you're doing up anything that's got more than one bolt in it, don't put one bolt in, do it up tight, and then get the next bolt and put that in and do that up tight, because Sure as eggs are eggs, you'll get to the end of the job and it'll be slightly out of alignment, and your last one won't go in the hole, and you end up having to undo all the other bolts and move it over slightly. So what I always do, whether it's putting a bonnet on a car or putting the front back on a washing machine or the back on a radio or a computer, whatever I've been playing with, I put all the screws in lightly first, and then you do them all up evenly, a little bit at a time, and that just makes sure that your component is sitting in the position that it was designed to sit in. There you go. Look, there's a lump of wood that needs to be pulled out before I can get this blade to sit in properly. I might have to go and get that sturdy knife that I made 2 weeks ago out of the car leaf spring to dig this out. But oh no, here it comes. It's wrapped around the shaft. There we go. And the reason that was wrapped around the shaft was because the blades were so blunt that they couldn't cut it. As soon as I started this machine, I saw it just wasn't cutting. It couldn't cope with one branch at a time being pushed in, whereas normally this machine can handle 3 or 4 small branches at a time. I've used it several times. Baz is a great mate. We look after each other in a whole lot of ways. The tools I've got, he hasn't got. The tools he's got, I haven't got. Quite often one or the other of us needs a spare bloke to hang on the end of something. So it's nice to have somebody here in town that you can always call on. Once again, fitting the chute on. It's held on by 4 bolts, so before you do any of them up, you put all of them in the holes. Just make sure everything's lined up and done properly. The cutting knives on one of these things are mounted onto this massive rotating plate, which is actually a flywheel, and that's what keeps the thing running when it hits big branches. It's the torque, the immense ability to overcome load that's is what the flywheel does. And because you've got a big flywheel, it's hard for the small motor to get it started. So these devices come with a simple clutch arrangement, and all that is a plate that lifts and lowers the entire motor, tightening or loosening the belt. This hasn't had any adjustment in quite a long time, and the belts are slipping. So while I've got the machine here, I'm just going to tighten up the adjuster and make sure that when Baz comes to use it next time that it locks into position firmly and drives with no slip. Just taking a quick look at the oil levels now. First thing I'll do is clean around the oil filler cap so that if I open it, dirt doesn't drop inside. We'll just make sure that everything's gone from around the hole. And we'll have a look inside and just make sure that it's got the right amount of oil on it. Yeah, I can see it. It's full to the right level, but it's really dirty. So I'm going to put the plug back in, and I'll give the motor a bit of a squirt down with a high pressure hose to get all this dirt off, and I'm going to give the thing an oil change because Briggs and scrap iron motors actually use the same oil as Land Rovers, so I'm one of the few people who's got SAE 30 around. Now this little device on the other side with the yellow wire, the silver box, is an oil level sensor. And if you ever find that you've got one of these and it won't start, it's probably because your oil is a little bit low. Spill a bit of oil on there and you'll probably find that your device, your lawnmower or your chipper or whatever it is, will fire up and go again. You'll find these motors on everything from shredders, cement mixers, water blasters, steam cleaners. The horizontal shaft Honda or Briggs and scrap iron is a very, very common motor. With a bit of air in the tyres, it'll bump up and down my steps a little bit easier. So, I can now get back into doing the job that I was going to do with it. Down to the bottom of the garden and into this pile of branches. Right, let's throw some branches at it. Oh God, yes! Oh, what a difference. Now I can get this pile reduced. It's great, you know, chopping up branches, you reduce things by something like 10 to 1. I can reduce a large trailer load of branches down to a wheelbarrow full of clippings in no time at all. And these clippings will get used all around the garden. You can see last year's clippings in front of me. I use those all around my fruit trees. I use it dried out in my composting toilet. Look at that. What a hungry little beast this machine is when it's set up properly. Now that I'm powering ahead through this, it makes sense for me to have a look around and just make sure that I've got everything else cut down that needs to be cut down. There's 3 branches that have annoyed me sticking up here a little further than they should. I want to encourage this tree to be more of a bush than a tree, so every couple of years I cut out the leaders that are trying to go up, and that encourages it to bush outwards, and it'll give me more privacy between the 2 halves of the property. So these 3 branches can get lopped off and they can go into the machine too. Don't you worry about safety protocols, because what you're watching here is actually a cyborg. It's a facsimile of me. It's a remote controlled drone that I operate from a concrete safety bunker down the end of the property. It doesn't require any safety protocols whatsoever because it's deaf, dumb and blind. Well, job's done. All that remains now is a quick tidy up, pull everything well into the corner. I've got a pile of pieces that are going to be cut up for firewood, and I've got another pile of thin straight saplings which are going to be used for garden stakes. So this can go and get cut into 8-inch pieces for the fire. Ones can then become garden stakes for tying up passion fruit plants and broad beans and things like that. So they can get put into a sunny corner to dry out, and they'll last me 2 or 3 years till they rot at the bases, and by that time I'll have some more. I've had this property for over 20 years, so I've got right into the cycle of the trees especially. The trees are an ongoing thing. There's always tree work to be done. As I get older, I'm trying to get ahead of it so that when the time comes when I have to pay someone else to do the work, I have them here for a day instead of a week. You will have noticed by now that everything on this property gets used. I'm kneeling on the ground in front of the area where all winter I've been cutting my firewood, so I've got a nice mix of chainsaw sawdust and good dirt that has semi-composted over the winter months and broken down. So what I'm doing now is sieving out the big bits and getting down to the really nice small stuff down the bottom, and I'm going to mix that with some of the delicious rich compost that I've got down in the compost bins, and I'm going to be making myself seed raising mix. And that seed raising mix is going to get used over the next week while I plant out all of the seedlings that I've been nurturing in small containers on the deck. I keep them close to the house because they need to be watered daily, and I've got to keep the slugs and the snails off them. Once they're a little bigger, they can fend for themselves and they can go into the garden beds, but I've run out of garden beds. So the next trick is I'm going to get 3 or 4 of the old reusable shopping bags that have got a little bit too ratty to go shopping with, and I'm going to fill those with potting mix, and I'm going to be planting this summer's veggies in shopping bags. I've had the most amazing weekend. I've done lots of stuff for myself, and I've finished a few jobs around here. I've almost doubled the space of my lawn. The firewood from the winter time has gone, and the residue that was underneath it has been turned into some beautiful potting mix by mixing that with some sieved compost that I've just opened up way down below, down the other end of the property in my compost bins. What else have I done? The local fire station is having a massive refurb and rebuild, and they're cutting into the old building, and they've got all these bricks and chunks of concrete, so I've been over and salvaged some of those so that I can use those in future projects. In the garden I've got things fading away and new things coming on. I like to plant one thing as the other thing passes into its final phases, so I've got stuff coming through. Down here is my potato bed that's coming ahead. That produces potatoes all year round. Over here is my firewood heated hot tub, and it's made out of scrap panels that I have cut out of window holes for the tiny houses that I've been building using this insulated paneling system. I've been working on this building for the last few weeks. I've done lots inside and lots on the outside. I've changed the angle of the roof. I've given it an overhang. I've put the solar up there. In last week's video you might have seen that solar hot water booster that I made, which is simply 100 meters of black poly tubing in a black bucket. It acts like an oven. It stops the wind carrying the heat away, and I can produce 25 litres of water in there in about 2 hours to a good temperature for doing the dishes or having a shower with. So every couple of hours there's another 25 litres of water there. It gets boosted through the gas on demand hot water heater and goes inside to power the shower and the hot sink. Hey, just here to my right is a new compost toilet design that I'm building. I'm building this one so that I can make it for other people. This is going to be the nicest composting toilet that I've ever made, and it's going to be available on my website for sale. I'm just laying it out so that I can make it take up the most minimal footprint. I don't want it to be large. I want it to be as small as possible so that people can use it as a portable loo in van conversions and schoolies and things like that. So it's kept as narrow and as short as possible. It will have a urine diverter. These are my silver beet plants that I'm going to seed, because all of these seed heads have got dozens of seeds on them, and they're going to provide me and anybody else who wants to take seeds off me next year's crop. More potatoes. Potatoes here go all year round. Got some tomatoes by the door here. We've got one main plant and I've got two small plants that I'm nurturing down the bottom. So I'll have a first flush and then a second flush as the two second plants come through. And what I'm doing over here is I'll be growing these courgettes down the bottom, and into this area here I'm about to plant beans, and the beans will climb up here as the silver beet fades away. I'll leave the silver beet until the seeds are mature, and then the silver beet can be pulled out. So everything's in a constant change. Quite often I've got 3 different things going at the same time in each different pot. And here I've been mixing up some old potting mix with some dried mulch from a year or two ago, and that's going into storage after it's dried, and that'll be my composting toilet mix for probably 6 months. And I make up a new one of these at various times, and it's made out of whatever I've got. Sometimes it's quite fragrant because it has rosemary or lavender in it. At the moment it's got a lot of hedging material, because I had my hedges cut by a professional chop man with a tractor, and he left me with all the mulchings, so I've got a pile of that. I've just been down the bottom of the property mulching the tree branches all day, so that's next year's mulch. And here I've got garlic, courgettes, and I've got some leek that are going to seed. The seed heads are just coming up. As the seeds mature, I'll harvest those, and that'll become next year's leek crop. Stack of little crystally rocks that I've found in my travels around the gold mines and trails around the place. And here are some seedlings. It's quite haphazard because I don't do any chemicals around here, so that means that my compost is a little weedy, can't be helped. But it doesn't take long until you can identify what is the correct plant that should be in each plant cell, and you can pull out the weeds. This is mostly lettuce, beans and kohlrabi. I think I've got some swede in there as well. They're about to be planted out. and I haven't got bed space for them. So what I'm going to be doing is, we'll race over here so that it makes some sense. What I'm going to be doing is mixing the old firewood residue. During the winter, while I've been cutting up firewood, I end up with a patch of sawdust, and that sort of mulches over the period of winter because of the rain. And now it's dried out, so I've mixed that with potting mix and then sieved it. And I've got this lovely mix here that I'm going to be planting into these old supermarket shopping bags because I'm running out of space. And that'll be my lettuces and my beetroot and my capsicums for the summer, just in temporary bags. And these will probably rot away and then they can go, but they're not suitable for doing the shopping anymore because they have developed the odd bit of damage. So that's the next use for those. Some guttering over here. I might have a little play with the hydroponic system at some stage, so that's why that's just staying there in case I need it. I'll give you the once over through the old garden shed. The garden shed's now solar powered. I've got 500 watts up there, and then I've got a couple of extra little solar panels, one that drives this floodlight so that I've got light out here when I need it in the evenings, and the other one follows that wire that you can see up there into here, and it gives me some sparkly lights on the trees. Up the top here you can see a UHF and a VHF radio antenna. That's because inside I've got both radios, and I'm part of a link up that helps people to get messages across country, because VHF and UHF only have a range of about 20 miles, 30 kilometers. Up the top here is my wind turbine. That supplements the power from the solar. I've got way more power than I need here. I don't power any hydro items. What else have we got here? We've got empty gas cylinders. They're due to be refilled. Full gas cylinders over here. These are containers of poo from the composting toilet that sit and mature here before going down the bottom and being put in the Oh, by the way, I've planted some pyrethrum daisies by the door here, so as soon as they bloom they'll start to deter the flies from coming inside, because during the summer the flies do like to mill around in a still space of air rather than being out in the hot sun. Now in here I've built a shower and a vanity unit, and at the moment I have a composting toilet in here, but that's only temporary. And over the other side I've built myself a wee kitchen, galley kitchen system. I've got a bit of storage. I've got cabinets here that are made out of old filing cabinets. There you go. Office trundlers that go next to the desk on wheels. So I've got lots of stuff stored in those, and some random cabinets that I scored at no cost. Here is my can dispenser, which rotates cans as I buy them. They go in the top. As I use them, they come out the bottom. Every prepper's got a good supply of toilet paper. I've got rechargeable lights here, there and everywhere in case I should ever need them, and plenty of fire extinguishers. This is my drip osmosis style, I guess you'd call it, water purifier. I put pure rainwater in the top, and that filters through this terracotta pot and fills the reservoir at the bottom here, and I can get beautiful clean filtered rainwater from the tap whenever I need it. These are the solar controllers that control the solar for in here. We've got a couple of charging points, the two UHF and VHF radios. I've got a wee oven that runs through an inverter. It only draws 1000 watts and very cheap to run, and I find that I can cook most things I need in there. Extractor hood. Nice old cedar blinds from the dump. I think they cost me $10 a pair for these 2 pairs. Cabinets made by me. And yeah, lighting. Just 2 random mismatched pickups that I managed to find. 2 lights for nothing and a shelf for nothing. This shower unit was on the side of the road for an inorganic shower unit was on the side of the road for an inorganic refuse rescue, and so I picked that up. I think the same with the heater. I think it was just sitting out at the curbside waiting to be collected, so I've scored that at no cost. My friend Julie Ibbotson gave me this beautiful vanity unit. I'm not sure what that style is called, but my friend Brent made up the Japanese cedar bench for me, and I supplied the pedestal that it sits on, which is an old Castrol oil drum. So there we go. I'm having a beer now. It's been a lovely weekend. As I say, I've had to play with a lot of things of mine and done things for myself, and I'm really pleased with the results. I'll do another video to round it all up, probably next week, and show you this thing when it's completely finished.